Juneteenth is a national holiday that has gained popularity in recent years, but I certainly wasn't taught about it, so what exactly is Juneteenth? To answer that question, we're going to have to talk about the Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation was an executive order issued by Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863. It proclaimed the freedom of slaves in Confederate states actively rebelling against the Union, namely North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Arkansas, Georgia, Alabama, and most importantly for this video, Texas. Border states like Missouri and Kentucky were exempted and still allowed to have slaves. However, freed persons could enlist in the Army for the Union, and the estimated 179,000 black men that joined the Union Army were crucial for its success. The reason for the limitation was because the proclamation was a military measure to help the Union win the Civil War, rather than a decree of human rights. Despite this, the shift to a war of freedom would ultimately lead to the ratification of the 13th Amendment on December 6, 1865, officially abolishing slavery everywhere in the United States. But how does this all relate to Juneteenth? Well, 6 months prior, on June 19th, 1865, where Juneteenth gets its name, the Union Army mustered enough strength to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation 2.5 years after its initial decree. Remember, information traveled slowly, and Confederate leaders didn't exactly embrace the news. Nonetheless, the enforcement happened in Galveston Bay, Texas, with soldiers announcing that the more than 250,000 enslaved black people in the state were free. This new freedom led Juneteenth to be referred to as a second Independence Day for America, and arguably is a more important one, as so many Americans were now free from such a vile form of oppression. The land of the free was now finally free. Mostly. Kind of? Not really. Regardless, Juneteenth was still a huge victory. Unsurprisingly, the first Juneteenth celebrations began in Texas the following year, but quickly spread to other states. Early celebrations took the form of prayer gatherings and expressions of freedom through clothing. Nowadays, celebrations still involve prayer, but also picnics and festivals. It's like 4th of July gatherings, but with less firework injuries and a more powerful undertone. Despite its impact, Juneteenth wouldn't become a state holiday in Texas until January 1st, 1980, 115 years later. And it wasn't for an additional 41 years that Juneteenth became a federal holiday with the signing of the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act on January 17th, 2021 by President Biden. Although Juneteenth isn't the day slavery was abolished in the United States, it was still an incredibly important day, and its celebration embodies the spirit of triumph over one of the most abhorrent forms of oppressions to ever exist. While the 13th Amendment was probably the most important win for enslaved black people, it's not surprising that Juneteenth is the day that's remembered. In the same vein that the story of Paul Revere is told, there's something captivating about the idea of Union soldiers bringing the news of the Emancipation Proclamation to Texas. However, racism in America did not end in 1865. Surprise, surprise, if you fuel a country and its economy on racism, it's difficult to extricate it. After the ratification of the 13th Amendment, black Americans would be murdered, disenfranchised, segregated, redlined, and in the modern era, sent to prison. For the record, that wasn't a comprehensive list, it was merely a tip of the iceberg. All of this is to say that the fight for equity is still ongoing. To frame Juneteenth as simply an important triumph of the past with no lasting consequences would be to deny the persisting roots of racism. With that being said, if you are looking to get involved in increasing equity in the United States, there are a plethora of organizations you can donate to. I've linked a few in the description, but two notable ones are the Sentencing Project, an organization that works to promote racial, ethnic, economic, and gender justice through minimizing the criminalization and incarceration of youth and adults, which disproportionately affects people of color. There's also the Center for Black Educator Development that works to increase and support black educators, specifically in low-income areas. If you're seeing this around June 19th, happy Juneteenth! This has been Informed Gamer, and thank you for watching.